There's just not much you can do anymore without electricity. A lot of people complain because it was in a lot of the towns and we didn't have it out in the country, you know. A lot of people talked about it and wanted it. I know they had some meetings at the school wanting people to sign up for it, the best I remember. And of course, most of them did that could afford it. Most of them did, as far as I know.
In 1937, it wasn't called Kenergy Corp. The first rural electric co-op to bring power to Kentucky farms was the Henderson County Rural Electrification Association. Kenergy, later formed by the merger between Henderson Union RECC and Green River Electric, proudly traces its roots back to that historic moment. President Franklin Roosevelt had established the Rural Electrification Administration on May 11, 1935. At that time, less than 11% of the nation's farms had electricity from a centralized power station. Those farms were lucky enough to be close to towns where they could access energy. As it turned out, existing utility companies weren't interested in lighting the rural outback. There wasn't enough profit in sinking poles and stretching power lines to sparsely populated rural areas. Fortunately, farmer-based cooperatives recognized the value of investing in electricity, and the nation's farmers recognized the value of being member owners in the companies that would deliver their power. Their loan applications poured into the REA. Federal officials soon realized these small, locally owned co-ops, such as Kenergy and its predecessors, would light rural America. Frank T. Street, owner of Kentucky Cardinal Farms, located 6 miles south of Henderson, was the first person in Kentucky to sign up for electricity. His power line on U.S. Highway 41A was energized in October 1937. Yes, times were hard, and in 1937, the nation's unemployment rate hit 14.3%. Across the nation, a loaf of bread cost an average of 9 cents. A new car cost $760, and a new home might go for $4,100. But farm folk who had struggled all their lives to read by kerosene lanterns, scrubbed clothes on washboards, cooked biscuits on pot-bellied stoves, or pumped water from wells didn't consider their light bills to be expensive. They wanted electricity because they knew it would change everything.
When I was a little girl, we had no electricity, and at Christmas time I'd watch for Santa Claus, but he never stopped at my house. And my brothers, which I had 5, told me that they couldn't see our house because we didn't have a light. And I believed them. So that's it.
I can remember, well, I did myself, wash on the washboard. And of course, Daddy, he'd build a fire under a big kettle, of water, and boil that water, and we'd wash those clothes on a washboard, and then put it in that kettle of hot water, and she'd take that out and put it in rinse water, and we'd rinse that and hang them on the line, didn't know what a dryer was.
I especially remembering being so upset when I would come home from school and wet clothes strung on strings all over the house. I remember ironing everything, and I mean everything, with a sad iron heated on the stove.
Well, our cooking was done mostly on a coal stove and a coal oil stove. And our refrigeration was an ice box where you had a sign you put up at how much ice you wanted the iceman to deliver, and you kept the stuff in that, or else let it down in the well to keep it cool so it wouldn't spoil. So that was the way we kept our stuff cool and cooked, either on a coal or wood stove or a coal oil stove. But things were pretty crude.
Well, I was the farmer's daughter, so I stayed out with my dad most of the time, followed him on the farm, and got up early in the morning before I went to school to help milk the cows, which then we separated the cream with a hand-cranked separator. And then I got ready to go to school.
I went to one-room school over there, but back from the mill, and that was a cold place. Your feet was cold. You wore heavy clothes and so forth in the wintertime. Well, we had an old pot-bellied stove in the middle of some room, and you froze on one side and burned up on the other. It was cold. And if you set further out, you were really cold. And it was miserable most of the time.
There was 3 of us in school at that time, and we'd get around the kitchen table to do our homework with a kerosene lamp sitting in the middle of the table. And really, we were used to that, you know. That was, didn't think anything about it. And then after you got electricity, you wondered how you did it.
Me and my brother, we were a couple of pretty industrious kids. I think I was 14, he was 16. And we decided Mom needs electric lights and stuff, so he and I wired that house ourselves. And I remember the electric REA people came out to check it out. The guy looked at it, and I said, "What do you think about it?" He said, "Who wired this house?" And we told our uncle. And I said, "What about it? Is it right?" He said, "Better than most." And I remember my brother kicked me on the side. Did you hear that? Yeah. So we had electricity. That's how we got it. He and I wired that house ourselves.
My grandmother, Givens, lived in Henderson, and she had electricity, you know. So when we'd go there, well, it's a lot of difference when we'd come back home from her house, you know. And of course, it was always amazing, you know, to see a light turned on or her radio. And of course, back then, none of us had TVs or anything like that, you know. I was lucky to have a radio.
I do remember working in town, and we had electricity, but our lights were a single bulb swinging from the ceiling in the middle of the room. If you came in on a dark night, forget, you couldn't find that bulb to turn on the light.
That was our light. We had in the center. You had one light with a bulb on it, and you'd turn it off when you'd leave or turn it on when you come in. You didn't have wall switches or anything then. You just had a pull chain, and that's the light. You had one light in each room.
Well, we put a string on that chain, clear out our bed at night. We'd go get in bed and pull that string, turn that light off, go to sleep. If we got to get up, you reach up there and find that string, give it a jerk, turn the light on. That's the way we did it. We had to pull water out of a well, but then we got electricity. We pumped water out of that well into a tank that built up pressure, and we had running water. And then we had a little old pot-bellied stove in the basement that water went through, and that's where we heated the wash water and stuff down there now instead of upstairs on the cook stove.
And he said, "You turned it on, you better turn it off when you left out of that room, because his dad would really get them if they left that light on." No, we didn't leave the light on, never. Always, you know, we turned it on, we turned it off. And now, just like this lamp sitting over here I keep it burning all the time, day and night, you know.
Electricity it's just a whole different era. Farming was done with horses and a plow that you walked behind, and now they go out to the shop, they weld, they have lights on in every building around here. They just use electricity all the time. And it's amazing what you can do with electricity for the amount of money that you're spending.
It would be hard for me, especially at my age. I don't know how to make it hardly. I'd almost have to go live with my son or somebody, because at age 92 it'd be hard to carry in coal or cut wood or whatever's necessary to do. But we couldn't. I wouldn't want to think about living without electricity.
Because there'd be so many things that couldn't be used if it, if it wasn't for electricity. Yeah, I think it's worth the value of having all this good stuff.
We get a lot for what we pay for. In other words, we really get more than we pay for if you get down to the brass tacks of it. And so we're lucky to have electricity at the cheap price we get it, because it's there's just not much you can do anymore without electricity. So the cost, the way I look at it, it's a cheap commodity for us. And I know it costs a lot to generate it, and it's going to cost even more with all the pollution and stuff coming on. They're going to get more strict with it. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but we just might as well say we're going to pay more for it, but we're going to enjoy it too.
I think it's a whole lot for the money you pay for it. I really do. I think it's a wonderful thing for the money. What would we do without it? We couldn't, you couldn't operate without it. You could operate piecemeal, I guess, like we used to. Pick and shovel, and I guess you'd eke through it, but it'd be awful to try to get by without it, I know that. Couldn't.